Hi everyone, and welcome to the Buidl radio podcast, where we talk all things blockchain and all things technical. Today with you, our host is myself, Polina, and Andrei Sobol. And today's our guest is Makoto Inoue from ENS Domains. And welcome, Makoto.
Hello.
We're going to start with our two favorite questions. As first one, can you please tell us what are you competent about and what we should totally ask you about today?
I'm competent speaking Japanese, for sure. And don't know. Well, I tend to be like a kind of jack of all trades, master of none. So I can do lots of many things. Yeah, but not really like competent on anything, I would say. Yeah. And also, I guess I tend to be like, especially in the Web3 world, everything, well, I've been in the space for 5-6 years, but everything is always new and everything half broken. But I tend to be kind of like ultimate alpha user or guinea pig. So even when like there's not much documentation or something, like I just tend to jump in and just somehow try to figure things out.
Yeah, that's close enough. Well, we're pretty much trying to figure out what are the things in Web3 that we should definitely ask you today. Like, ask me about backend, ask me about, I don't know, rollups.
Cryptography, maybe. Maybe some game theoretical things, maybe another things.
I guess in terms of the specialty, I don't really know much about cryptography, to be honest. I guess I tend to do lots of data analytics. So like my background is actually, I used to be a database administrator before I jump into the Web3. So, and one of the attraction to Web3 world is more of the transparency that, like, because blockchain is all public, well, mostly, so that like you can kind of make a query and all that stuff. So most of the ENS Dune dashboard is made by me. So anything related to probably ENS matrix or data stuff, I'm probably more competent than the other field.
Right. The second part of a question is, what are the things in Web3 space in general that we shouldn't ask you about today? You mentioned cryptography, for example. Yeah, like things that we shouldn't touch.
If there's something not good, I just said I don't know. But yeah, I think core cryptography, like even though I work heavily on the layer 2 stuff, I'm more about the end user. Again, like I'm the ultimate end user, not necessarily the implementer of core stuff. But if there's something I can use, I somehow tend to figure it out. But if you ask me deep on why and how this thing is working, I might not be the best person to be able to answer. So yeah, like something like core cryptography, it's not necessarily my strengths, to be honest.
And you mentioned that in Web3 right now, everything is half broken. Can you specify what's the broken part right now in Web3? What do you think the worst thing that we need to fix, and we will get more user in this space?
To be honest, I don't know if it can be fixed, but the thing is, Web3 often, it's actually the weakness is also the strengths. That Web3 often is kind of composability matters, right? Like it's not just about you use one system, but like it's a combination of various different things. So when you put them all together, something is always broken. And I think that's not something it's easily easy to fix. Well, one solution could be that you have one monolithic solution that one player just implements everything, but that's what Web2 did it, kind of. So I think it's part of the nature of Web3 is that because there's so many things available and you kind of compose all the things. So if you when you try to fix something, like if you try to use this combination altogether, actually I'm the first person who encountered a problem or something like that, right? So yeah, I think that's I'm kind of, it's been like that when I first got into the space in 2016, and it's still been a bit like that. And then I think it's even more difficult because back in 2016 it was just Ethereum, but nowadays all the cross-chain and multi-chain stuff, and there's more chains involved, so it's even more challenging to put them all together, to be honest. Yeah, so I don't know if it's something but having said that, that's the problem I encounter as a developer, and as a user, like as an end user, they shouldn't really struggle that kind of stuff. So I think more it's more like our problem to solve, to basically put them all together in a cohesive way that it doesn't look like it's broken when it's presented to end user. But having said that, like even I think cross chain bits a bit difficult because depending on each wallet, how they connect to each networks and the stuff is slightly different. So when I tried a couple of days ago, when I tried to test like some connectivity from wallet side, I don't even know how to connect to testnet to begin with for most of the mobile wallet, that kind of stuff. But again, for the end user, that's not a problem they need to face because they don't need to connect to testnet. So
okay, well, we kind of tried to pivot it into the topic. Like DNS itself is decentralized, and then we have now decentralized domain. Why do we need to decentralize it even further? Why do we need a blockchain in DNS?
People might think we trying to decentralize DNS, but it's not necessarily how it started. DNS is great, like it's one of the oldest running like web services since like 1983 or 4, and it's longest. It's great. It serves a purpose for what it does, but it was catered to mostly, even though you can put anything, but like I don't think people put text record in DNS server often. It's catered for serving web services, and ENS started off as a kind of resolving crypto addresses, like Ethereum wallet address. That was a primary focus. Even though now we can put something like the content hash of a decentralized file system like IPFS and Swarm and the stuff. But core I guess utility is to serve crypto addresses. That's the first mission. And the second bit is we don't necessarily kind of compete again in the DNS, in the sense that we have a .eth namespace, which is the most decentralized system within ENS ecosystem. But little less known fact is that you can import the DNS name as ENS name. So like a .xyz or Coinbase integrate with cb.id. Even Lens protocol has lens.xyz, and all these DNS names you can actually import as ENS. So ENS technology itself is kind of neutral, and you can use with DNS names. And but like if you import DNS as ENS name, then you are under the kind of rule of DNS, and I can, like if they sense a certain domain name, it might not function, all that stuff. But yeah, we try not to be kind of ideology max, but we trying to be kind of technology platform neutral, that if you have your needs, if DNS suits, you can use it. And because like another thing is, yes, ETH is kind of decentralized, but at the same time, it's kind of, you can't really censor either. That means many names you want to use, that ETH name might be already taken by someone who might be using for legit usage, or that person might be just hodling. And for these people, and especially brand, right? Like I think all the Amazon, Apple, Google, that's all taken by some people call squatters, other people call domainers. And so for these brand and the stuff, we cannot just take the name from these people. So giving the DNS as a ENS is a viable options. So depends on the usage, you could use decentralized option like the ETH, or just you use kind of conventional technology with DNS.
All right. So simple question also about UX. How would I buy ENS domain then?
If you go to our website is ens.domains, and if you click like register ENS name, it goes to our app site, app.ens.domains. That's where you can basically search the name you want to register, and if it's available, you can register with, and you need an ETH, even though we have a registration fee of majority of the names start from $5 per year, but that's $5 worth of ETH you have to use to register, and that's one way. We also have I think MoonPay integration. So for people who do not have ETH, you could actually just I think load up crypto via MoonPay. So for these new users, you can buy. If these names are taken, one viable option is going from secondary market, because .eth name is actually NFT. So if you go to somewhere like OpenSea, or there's a site called ENS Vision, which is a marketplace focused on like handling like ENS names, you could kind of bid for it. So that's kind of 2 or 3 different ways. And because our registrar itself is smart contract, I think it's a couple of the wallets or external services, they might be able to register a name from their wallet directly. Yeah, so these are the different ways to register your name. And also, that's if you want to have .eth. Yes. Yeah, ETH name. If you want to import a DNS name, you can also do it from appens.domains. There is some, you need to know how to administer your DNS name from like GoDaddy or somewhere. But once you decide to register to import a DNS name, you actually have to put your ETH address on the DNS service itself using the text record. And then once you set, and there is something called DNSSEC enabled, you should be able to press a button from our side to be able to import these DNS name as ENS. But just a precaution is that importing takes a lot of computation power, and that reflects into the gas cost. So it's going to be very expensive. We are working on the new ways to utilize kind of DNS in a gasless way, which I think we already have a code, but haven't fully launched yet. But eventually, I think registering using the DNS name as ENS would be a lot cheaper. But currently, you have to do it from our site, and it'd be more expensive. Yeah. What other ways? Oh yeah, and another thing is, only if you want to have the .eth name, you have to register. But we have something called subname. For example, if I have like matoku.is, I can basically issue subname. So like foo.matoku.is. So some wallets, I think they do issue subnames. So like you don't necessarily have to register it. You could just get these subnames from these app, or like wallets.
Okay, based on my understanding, well, basically when you register an ENS name, you're creating like an entry on the ENS contract that says, okay, this name fits to this address. So that's why I'm asking, if you have a subname, do you also register it within the ENS as linked to a specific address, or how would that work?
Subname is exactly same as second level name. It's just like you associate the same address, or you can associate with text record or content hash. So the usage is exactly the same. Only the difference is quite usually when we first started, parents was able to overtake the subname. So even if you get subname from someone, the parent name could rewrite the ETH record. So, however, we released something called name wrapper back in April, where we can add it more like fine-grained permission system, so that parent's name can ban the ability to overtake, so that even if you start buying like and also subname before it wasn't NFT, but with these wrap names are now NFT. So you can purchase from secondary market. And if you check the permission, the parents is ban that feature, you can be assured that parent cannot overtake. So there's a few differences, but the usage as a name service, there's a subname and the secondary name is exactly the same.
All right. The question then: how do you decide on the price for a specific ENS domain name? Like
in a secondary or primary market?
Primary, or just very fresh new ENS name?
Yeah.
How would you decide on price of that?
Well, it's actually fixed price in that. Like I think anything up to 5 characters or above is $5 a year. I think 4 character is like $160, and 3 character is like $650. That's the base annual, and we have a expiration date, and when it gets expired, we have 90 days grace period where people can not use anything apart from renewing. But once it gets released, that's when actually the new pricing happens. Is that we have we have some do you know Dutch auction?
Yeah, but explain.
So that Dutch auction basically is a pricing usually it starts from lower to goes higher, but Dutch auction is usually the reverse, like higher goes down to lower. So when the name got expired and released, it actually starts from I think $100 million worth of ETH, and it goes into exponential curving. So like in the very beginning, price curve is very high, like this, I think. Yeah, and after 21 days, there's no more. We call premium. Decay. I think we call decaying premium model. That like it basically starts from 100 million and goes down to no premium. So it just goes back to $5 over 21 days. So some names which got auctioned, was purchased long time back, and some people are actually looking into snipe all these names. And I think when we first introduced the release, another thing is like when we ENS started back in 2017, when we first launched, we didn't have a kind of annual fee model. It was more about you lock the ETH and you kind of borrow the name, and if you return the name, you get the money back. So we have no notion of expiration or registration. But when we switched after 2 years in 2019, we introduced this the expiration. And when that happens, I think we just had a $2,000 premium, but people still snatching on the first block. And when people like in the traditional DNS world, people like when some like precious name, well, not even precious, like if you forget to kind of renew, and if it gets expired, it's immediately snatched by someone and it gets parked, right? And to prevent that, we started doing this kind of having premium, but $2,000 wasn't good enough, so we I think increased to 10,000 or something, but still people are snatching. And if people start competing, what eventually comes with a gas war that people pay the highest amount of gas to get into the block. So then why would you waste that money to the gas fee? So we introduced to make it like ridiculously high. So some people I think confused, like why would you try to sell the expired name for 100 million? But intention is not about selling for 100 million. Intention is setting the ridiculously high amount that no one would bid for it, but it goes down over 21 days. So that's one way of, or actually only way for the new pricing discovery mechanism for the expired names on the primary market. For the secondary market, it's just up to the second NFT marketplace, such as like OpenSea or ENS Vision.
I just want to ask you some detail about this Dutch auction, because it's easy to choose the starting price because it should be ridiculously high, but ridiculously. But what can be the mechanism of understanding what should be the step? Because if we will say that the step will be $1,000, that means that mostly the biggest part of the domains will be sold for $1,000 or to the $0 or whatever, and competition will go to mempool to MEV, not to the auction. How you discover the function for choosing what the step should be?
You mean how much the delta is?
Yes. The delta for each step.
Yeah. I think our assumption is that because the range is so high, it doesn't go into the mempool competition when it goes from like 100 million to 70 million. Suddenly people start buying it's good. But yeah, in the very beginning, it's very high, but eventually it goes to granular, right? If people wants to buy, I don't think people would compete on the exactly same block. If they want to outcompete, they just buy a bit higher. Yeah. So our assumption is they wouldn't have the competition in the same block, given that there's price range, and it goes over 21 days. So if the price goes down in like 3 hours or something, sure. But like this one is kind of 3 weeks long process. Initially, it used to be 4 weeks, but we saw like it's a bit too long, so we shrunk to 21 days. But yeah, back to your question, it was under the assumption that people don't compete with this amount of range. Yeah. So I'm not sure if I answer your question, but yeah, our answer is like maybe we don't have it. That was our assumption. It might be wrong if we look into the it's on a blockchain, so you could look into all the purchasing history and see how many. Well, actually, I don't think mempool information is not necessarily on the blockchain, so you wouldn't be able to see, I guess.
I will ask a little bit about more detailed about the delta because from my perspective it should be something like non-linear function where as higher current price is the higher delta should be, because it's makes sense if you decrease every new block, if you decrease for $1,000, if it's millions.
It's exponential. It goes
right
like
now.
Initially it's very high, but eventually it goes low.
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
It's just like a very simple one. I don't think it is very complex economics nor anything. It's just like very simple, the curve.
Okay. When you start distribution of the ENS, you use a different mechanism, different auction, the Victory one. Am I right?
Yes. When you first started back in 2017, yes. That was. May I explain Victory auction?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So Victory auction was, I think theoretically it's supposed to be most fair amount. Is that basically if two people bids and the second pass, I think first the highest bidder wins, but they actually pay the second highest price. That's basically the Victory auction, and it was supposed to be theoretically that people wouldn't just bid the ridiculous high amount, because that's not the amount they're not going to pay anyway, and they encourage people to bid fairly. That was, I think, the initial theory behind. It's just that not just Victory auction in general, but we also use another thing called actually let me check 2017 ENS auction, because there are some stats and I think, and also another thing is that happened back in 2017 May the 4th, when they were, I think that was a time Aragon did the ICO back in March or May, and Brave did the ICO, and they sold in 2 blocks or something. And Banca did ICO, and they sold 150 million. And the Status did all the stuff. So like the gas price start getting crazy. So to prevent that, Nick Johnson, the creator of ENS, code it in a way that not all the names auction starts at the same time, because no matter how you say, like, it's for over 7 days, people just try to rush in for no reason. So I think the name, depending on the hash of the name, the starting date would depends from May 4th till over, like, I can't remember, like 8 weeks or something. And then each people auctioned, and I think the highest 3 million ETH got bid apparently in total, with 10,000 unique bidders. And I think somewhere I think I had like the highest name was like I think I can't remember, 125 or no, 25 million. I can't remember exactly, like ridiculously high amount, but that was the highest bid. But the highest paid was like 10 times lower or something like that, I think. Yeah. But the auction itself was fine, but after the 8 weeks period, we had so commit reveal is like, I think 72 hours to commit, and the following 24 hours to reveal, mostly to prevent the kind of front run issue. But people only rush into it during the first 8 weeks. But after that, there's all the names who people thought there will be value would be already auctioned off. So after the initial period, there's no reason to really auction the name. So eventually, I think that made kind of purchasing registration period really hard, that people often forget, like after 3 days, to come back to reveal. And if you forget to reveal, I think your ETH got locked forever or something like that. So we changed the contract. I think in 2 years, 2 years after, when we changed to when we first launched, it was called temporary registrar. That like we knew that we don't know what's a final model, so we said like in 2 years we're going to change. So when we changed after 2 years, we changed to just having very small period. We still have commit reveal, but having, I think, only 1 minute gap. So like now you can register in like a couple of minutes. Yeah, so that was I think one of the first big scale auction system happened in blockchain, maybe.
Related to this commit reveal schema, as I understand, one of the reasons why we need it, it's because you want to prevent the scenario that someone tried to buy a domain, but someone else tried to cyber squat these domains, and you not only hide the amount of money that you put into your commit, but the name of domains also. Am I right?
When you commit, I don't think you put money when you commit. When you commit, it's just a hash of the name with salt. But when you reveal, you try to pay. So by someone front running, people cannot steal money or anything. But it's just that people know the intention that this name someone wants it. So people could just look into the mempool or something. And if we don't have commit reveal model, people would know that what name people wants to register, and they can just front run you. But we have basically 1 minute gap between commit and reveal. So like as long as, so after someone send a commit, I think you have to wait, I think 60 seconds to send it. So if you see someone doing the reveal, because reveal is the only time you would actually see the real name. So when you see the reveal, then people cannot just outbid the reveal, because people have to send another commit, then do the reveal. But at the same time, that means if you don't, I think, reveal within 1 minute or something, I think, yeah, people could. No, actually, no. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So that's very basic mechanism.
What's the worst scenario if someone will not reveal the data to the blockchain? Is this someone lose money, or what will happen?
No, they just wasted the gas fee to commit. Again, as I said, when you commit, you don't commit is just like a committing the hash. You don't actually send the money. Only you only send the money at reveal phase. So if you don't reveal, you just don't lose any money. You only wasted the gas for commitment.
So the worst case scenario is only the scenario where the miners will conspire between each other. I mean, stakers will conspire between each other. They will censor your reveal transaction, and after that they cyber squat your ENS. But this will be the worst case scenario.
But like if you only find out when that person is revealing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't.
But if you see the reveal transaction and you will not include it into the block and you will wait.
Oh, yeah, that could happen, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Paulina?
Yeah, that was so sad. Okay. Yeah, I guess let's talk about maybe layer 2s and other chains then. How would ENS work cross-chain? Because I know you have register on mainnet, but if I want to use my ENS on, let's say, Polygon or zkSync, how would that work with ENS?
Yeah, so there's a different like two or three different kind of things involved. The first thing is like when you say you use the name on layer 2 or like other chains, most people kind of assumption is like you kind of have the copy of a ENS. So when you switch the network, you connect to the ENS on that specific chain. That's kind of general people's expectation, but we kind of solve it in a different way. Is that ENS is primary for kind of phone book, and the majority of use cases you look up the name and you find for the address. So it's 99% like a read-only purpose. And what we thought is that there's a place to store the chain specific. Well, like how you store the chain specific information and where to store is a different problem. That we have something called multi-coin types. That I have matoku.eth, you can put Ethereum address, but you can also put like Bitcoin address or like any other like chains you can associate. So one name can have multiple addresses. So if we want to differentiate different address per different chain, you can just store in Ethereum mainnet that like Ethereum address is 0x123, Polygon address is 0x567. So that's one way is multi-coin type, which has been there since 2019. But then obvious next question is, but I don't want to store on the mainnet because gas is so expensive. That's where it comes to the conversation of the discussion of where to store. And our thinking is like, so the storage is only motivated to store in another chain due to the gas cost, right? And one thing I think UX issue you have to find is, okay, if I say I don't want to store in, everybody will probably agree that I don't want to store on a layer 1 because gas is expensive. All agree. But where to store depends on your preferred chain. Like you might interested in storing in Optimism, and I might be interested in storing like zkSync or something like that. And worst user experience is every time I try to look up, you are name in address book, I also need to know which chain you stored, and we have to change the network. And as I mentioned, I think client, everybody use different clients or wallets to interact with the chain. So you don't have a guarantee that your favorite chain is in your. If it's MetaMask, you can pretty much set everything, but it's actually quite hard for something like mobile wallets to set this chain so that I can look up the address of this specific person. So so to solve this problem, we kind of came up with what was the name of the protocol? CCIP read, aka EIP 3668, which called off-chain data resolution. I think standard is that basically instead of connecting to the network and instead of trying to know which chain you stored your information and connecting to the chain directly, which is a lot of UX nightmare, we basically provide a so-called gateway service, which is just like a web services that when you ask, and the idea is when you look up the ENS name, everybody just connect to mainnet.
Yep.
And so even if you might be connected to other chains, you can create make a new RPC endpoint or something. So you always connect to mainnet and ask mainnet that I want to know the Ethereum address or a Polina.is or something. But Polina, when in Ethereum layer 1, when you asking for the address of Polina.is, and instead of trying to find out where it's stored, we just simply throw the error with a gateway URL, which client basically asks hey, I don't know where Polina stored the data, but just can you give it to me? And this URL gateway service is in charge of finding out where. And the fact that you said Polina is the one who set the gateway services, and you set it up, the information about where it stores is contained per the name. So if I set into Polina sets to Arbitrum gateway service. Well, actually, you can in this point, it doesn't have to be any chain. It can be just normal database. You could say I put Polina.is the Ethereum address into Google spreadsheet. You can just set your resolver to specific gateway, which all it does is just get the data from Google spreadsheet and return. And I don't need to know where it's being stored, or because it's a responsibility gateway. So that's the kind of basic role of CCIP read. That no matter where quite often what I explain is it's just similar to how NFT works. The NFT ownership information is on chain, but the metadata or JPEG information is often you fetch from web services, where I think 721 standards have the URI as a function name, and you just return the URL. So the URL should know where it's stored. So that's kind of base building block. But then so that's back to kind of semi more centralized solution that you have to trust this gateway service. So for more decentralized focused people, we are working on, and we have a kind of solution in testnet is that we call it L2 resolver, is that most of layer 2, so off-chain, roll-up system, what was it? What was the name of the roll-up? For the Arbitrum and the Optimism, they use not the ZK one.
Optimistic rollup.
So optimistic rollup and also ZK rollup. They have different ways to verify, but I think the common thing is they all put the kind of state root of the layer 2 back to layer 1 as a security mechanism. So by utilizing that mechanism, what we are building is the gateway services ask not only for the data, but they also ask for the proof. So proof is usually the I don't know if you guys are aware, like is get proof RPC call, which returns the kind of storage proof, and we also call for the state root, and gateway services return the data with storage proof and the state root of that layer 2, and when a client received the proofs, we hit the callback function, which is predefined on our resolver. And that callback function usually look up to the most of the time rollup contract of the specific chain. I think in case of Optimism's case, it has like OP output oracle or something. And in Arbitrum's case, is I can't remember the name, Arbitrum rollup contract, which has a list of latest kind of state root. So we first asked the L1 contract if is this the state root I got from gateway? Is this actually the one included on the L1? And with that information, we look into the Markov tree library to see if this storage proof is included in this state root. By doing that, you still rely on the gateway services, so they could actually intercept and not return. That you can do by gateway services. You can actually also specify multiple URLs. So, and but the gateway cannot lie. If gateway return the false data, the L1 smart contract can reject. And the benefit of this over the first mechanism I explained is like if Polina sets Polina.is into gateway service with Google spreadsheet, you 100% have to trust, not only have to trust, but only Polina can actually set the gateway services unless you trust someone else to return the correct data. Whereas this L2 gateway, you no longer have to deploy the gateway, or you don't have to trust, so you can use anyone's gateway services. So like I have actually the test implementation of this for the base and the Arbitrum, base and the Optimism. And the gateway services, actually, I didn't even deploy. When we first explained this idea to Optimism engineers, they got super excited and they created, they actually deployed the endpoint by themselves, and I was just too lazy, so I just used their endpoint. But still, you can kind of trustlessly verify. So that's kind of layer 2 integration we've been working on. And we do, one thing is like, so to do this, I explained that, like a gateway takes the storage proof and they verify. That can be actually not just for ENS, you could use for some other purpose. The flow of this CCIP read is actually implemented in something like CC. You can do the same logic in the any contract level. So in Ether.js, if you call function, if you put the option called CCIP read enabled, you can do that same logic to non-ENS contract. So Nick Johnson created something called EVM gateway, like about a couple months ago, which have a general system to do it for anything. So this mechanism is currently unique to ENS, but if you have a project which wants to use this kind of read-centric way of verifying state from L2 on L1, you can actually build on top of this mechanism called EVM gateway. That was a very long answer to your question.
I mean,
hopefully it didn't bore you.
I mean, that's also very comprehensive as well. The only question I have to follow up with is you still will need to put your main username into layer 1. So if I have Polina.eth, I still have to register it on Ethereum, right? And then I'll put a gateway onto, let's say, layer 2 resolver, let's say Optimism. So it will go and look up my Optimism, the address from the Optimism, right? So it's not like I want to save money and I can just put my ENS on, I don't know, let's say Polygon. I still will have to do it on the mainnet, right?
Yeah. So currently, so this is again, and another thing I didn't mention is the so-called wildcard, that if subname doesn't exist on the layer 1, you can ask its parent. And most of the system make use of this feature to issue. So like you have to basically have your ENS name on layer 1. But if you move the resolver to layer 2, you can issue subnames on layer 2 without creating on L1. So we think that this layer 2 integration will be the strongest usage if like wallets or exchanges or app issue subnames to the user. So that's one way of making use of this integration. But another thing is actually, as I said, if parent moves the name to a certain chain, all the children becomes basically lives in that specific layer 2. That means we can, if we move .eth into specific chain, all the names can be in that chain. So if we in future, if we set on where is a canonical layer 2 chain for, we want to be kind of permissionless. So if you prefer your favorite chain, I want you to have a choice to move your storage into your favorite chain. But because the issue of registering ETH name will remain expensive, one way is that we can move .eth, the top level domain, to a specific chain. Once we do that, all the names basically Matoku.eth already exists on layer 1, so you kind of have to use it. But if you want to register a new ETH name, when ETH top level domain actually move to the new chain, that could be completely not gasless, but like gas will be in a layer 2 price. So that's the technically option in future.
Related to IPFS and ENS, what do you think? What is why? It's a lot of technical things happened around it, around integration. A lot of sites try to use this combination for making real dApp. But in reality, nobody use it in a way that like unique site. I mean, maybe someone have just backup ENS plus IPFS version, but nobody tried to use it as a single solution. Why does it happen?
So this is about setting ENS pointing to IPFS content hash and using the basically web, right? The solution does exist. Actually, let me check what's the usage right now for the content hash. Content hash usage is 22,000. So it's not a lot actually. So we have 2.3 active ENS names. So 22,000 is basically less than 1%. So it's still, adoption is still low. I guess it does serve the purpose for censorship resistance, that if someone's tried to send, so like one of the things it's less known is that you can actually go to IPFS gateway and the /IPFS/ENS name, you can also resolve ENS name. So you don't have to remember, no one can remember content hash, right? So you can actually search ENS directly on the IPFS gateway. And if one IPFS gateway got censored for whatever the reason, there's a bunch of IPFS gateway. So you can actually, you always have the kind of copy, right? So in the censorship resistant purpose, I think there's a need use for it. However, majority of user doesn't really pick web hosting service for the censorship resistant purpose. So I'm not quite sure if it would ever come to the day where the web solution would replace the traditional way. So that's first question. The second question is probably our toolset is still a bit limiting that. I think there's some ecosystem partners who providing easy ways to kind of upload IPFS and tie into ENS name, but the experience is not as perfect as it can be. So that could be more of the UX onboarding issue as well. combination of that, this is very, I still think it's a bit of niche usage, plus onboarding might not be perfect.
Yeah, I'm just trying to go to vitalik.eth and see what Google shows, and it just uses the line as a search line instead of actually resolving it. So that's pretty
Vitalik.eth. He does use vitalik.eth for.
I think if you use it with compatible browsers like Brave or Opera, it maybe will resolve.
So if you go to Vitalik is XYZ or Vitalik is Limo, but it should be able to. I think Limo is the easier one. If you go to vitalik.is.limo, it goes to his IPFS. I think it's IPFS solved page.
Mm-hmm.
Is this? How do I know? Oh, let me check. I might be talking about complete bullshit. So, but good thing about Ethereum is you can verify. Don't trust, verify. So let me just check into the Vitalik is okay. His content hash is set. Yeah, so you can also see the IPFS version as well. But I think is Limo and XYZ look into the content hash. So if it's set, you can actually go through vitalik.is.limo.
Right. I know ENS has a DAO.
Yes.
And a whole governance process. Can you maybe a little bit talk about that?
Sure.
How does it work? How did you reach this model and so on?
Yeah, sure. So I think we launched the token about 2 years ago. That since the kind of launch of the ENS back in 2017, we've had a conversation of what to do with governance. That for a long time we still have 7 multi-sig of 7 key holders that who has ultimate powers to basically upgrade the ENS as a protocol, and something like ability to. So it's been long like that. Like if you have Matoken.eth, actually these 7 key holders could overrule your name. That privilege itself, I think we killed at the contract level, but there are still a couple of ways to, and also in the past, the revenue to registration revenue has been in first it goes to smart contract, and that one, the ways to withdraw, that has only been done through the multi-sigs. So we always knew that we need a better mechanism than just 7 multi-sig, but in the very beginning it just worked, so we were using. And I think around we had like every year we had a conversation. We had to talk about, oh, should we do DAO or not do DAO, that kind of stuff. And I think about 2021, that was a time when that was a year after basically the DeFi summer started. And around I think 2020, 2021, there's a lot of DAO kind of framework and the tools came out. So that, but I think the 6 months we did a token launch. Gitcoin did the token launch, and that was kind of fast. From 2020 to 2021, lots of DeFi projects did the token DAO launch, and 2021 was I think Gitcoin was one of the first like non-financial organization did the token launch. So I think we did learn a lot from these early kind of pioneers. So many of the, for example, DAO's governance voting mechanism, that was a first, I think, right after Open Zeppelin released their governance module, which is mostly kind of inspired by the Compound's governance model. So we are the one of the first to use Open Zeppelin's governance module, and also use, there's a snapshot for the kind of chain voting all the stuff. So like I think part of the reason was DAO toolset has matured to the point that we can make use of it without reinventing the wheel. And also, I think 6 months before, that was a time when we first transitioned from like a lock model to a registration model back in 2019, our revenue was very small. But during 2020 to 2021, our registration started picking up. That I think back in May, we actually gave $700,000 worth of, I think, ETH to Gitcoin, just to kind of say, because like when we first launched, we are one of the biggest kind of non-VC backed project, and it's mostly thanks to the very large grants, $1 million dollars worth of grants from Ethereum Foundation back in 2018. That's when Nick Johnson, the creator of ENS, used to be a guest engineer at the Ethereum Foundation, and he was kind of developing as his own spare time. But with the kind of generous grants from EF, he had a chance to spawn off as his organization back in 2018, and that's when I joined. And when we started doing this, basically becoming sustainable. And I think back in 2021, we only had like 3 or 4 engineers, so the revenue start like overtaking our kind of expenses. So we started thinking, well, actually, what should we do with the kind of revenue proceed? So first we paid forward to Gitcoin, but we need a more sustainable way to do. And that was a time when we started talking about, we need a DAO to make a bigger decision. So for these two kind of reasons combined, like a maturity of the DAO toolset and the ENS start having some sustainable revenue, so we need a mechanism to decide what to do with it. That was the kind of right time to tie into the DAO. So that's when it happened. So I think our one unique thing we did was I think Paulina saw it in Rome, that we created so-called constitution to kind of state our core values, and we wrote it down. And then when we did a token launch, you had to kind of, you still get the token even if you kind of disagree everything, but you kind of agree on the 4 principles, and all these were actually set into as a snapshot voting result to just say how many people actually agree with it. Because if half of the people don't agree with the constitution, the DAO doesn't really make much sense. But I think, I can't remember the actual number, but majority of people agreed with 4 principles, and we did it. And also another thing we did is, like, as part of the token launch, we asked people to just to delegate your votes to someone, because we know that not everybody's gonna vote for every single proposal. So as part of the token launch, we asked people to delegate. I think that was, again, one of the mechanisms we didn't invent. It was the mechanism, I think Gitcoin actually did it like 6 months ago. So that's how it launched. I think in the very beginning, that was it. Well, another unique thing we did is, like, I think we distributed, I can't remember the exact, I can send you the link of the token distribution, but I think some percent, 5 to 10% of the token got distributed to so-called like kind of ecosystem partners, or these wallets or dApps who integrate with ENS early on. So we wanted these like value aligned people to have a token, so we distributed to these. And also for the token distribution itself, we thought, like, rather than giving per number of names you hold, which could benefit more of the kind of domainers, squatters type people, we wanted to have a voting from people who believe in basically the hodler of ENS. So how we derive this, that depending on how long you held that one name. So at that time, I think it was already 4 years has passed since the launch. So if you hold a name since the beginning back in 2017, then if you also another thing, renewal is you don't have to renew every year. You can renew like 5 years or 10 years or 100 years, or some people put 1,000 years in advance. If you put more than like, I think 4 or 8 years, these people get the maximum kind of value for the ENS drop. So we try to have some unique characteristic about how to distribute to the people who basically are active on ENS to distribute. So that's the beginning. Then after that, I think eventually evolves that we now have a so-called steward who actually we have a working group like 3: metagov, ecosystem, and public goods, and each public goods nominates, I think, have like 2 or 3 so-called steward, which got selected by snapshot voting. It used to be every 6 months, but I think now I think there's a proposal to make it longer. That like basically we select these people, and these people request a budget for, again, 6 months. Now probably it's getting longer. So the idea is, if there's some important governance decisions such as protocol changes or huge amount of the kind of spending request, it still goes through like DAO voting, but more of the smaller kind of grant making decisions, we delegate these decisions to these stewards in core working groups. That's the core of the ENS DAO governance right now.
I have one question related to governance, because right now what I see on the mainnet contracts of the ENS, they are not use these patterns which called proxy. It's just one time deployed. This means that the things that you can modify on these contracts are limited. That means that some part of the protocol are set on the stone and it cannot be changed. Whatever you can do whatever you want, but it will be always stay the same because you cannot upgrade it. Or maybe I make some mistakes when I research it.
Proxy pattern is newer than the launch of the DAO. So the ENS. So when ENS launched, I think that pattern itself didn't exist. And also the fact that we have a resolver is basically very similar to how proxy pattern works. The registry has a very, very light, I think it has less than 50 lines of code if you exclude the comment. So all registry does is it has a key and it has a value, but that's a resolver. So by upgrading the resolver, you can keep by swapping the resolver, you can keep upgrading. So that was kind of very simple alternative ways to the proxy. Like you don't do proxy as people do now, but that kind of replaced the usage for the proxy pattern. But for layer 2 project, we could actually use proxy pattern, like if we deploy things. But like again, another thing in proxy, if you do the proxy, who could upgrade is another governance decision, right? If you don't have the proxy and upgradable pattern, it's immutable. So depends on the situation. So if you have a ways to be, if you want to set on stone, you actually don't want to use proxy. But if you know this needs to be upgraded, and if you're clear about upgrade, who can upgrade, then I think you can add it. But ENS didn't have it at that time, and also the resolver model was kind of alternative solution to the proxy pattern. That's my thing, I think, interpretation of why we don't have it.
And last questions related to ENS. It will be much more philosophical than the previous ones, but for now you can see the near protocol where there is no UX patterns, where the people use public keys And what's happened in near that usual UX patterns is people just use name services, near name services, and everyone has this something.near URL. And what do you think? Is it utopia or dystopia related to the Ethereum? If Ethereum will lose these patterns of using addresses which are a hash of public keys?
I mean, chain itself having name service I think is a great thing. It's just like their way of onboarding, making user experience easy. So I think I'm supportive of that idea itself. It's just that it comes down to the integration, right? And I don't know whether near name service is, even though near has Aurora, which is EVM compatible, how many, it all comes down to the adoption of how many integration happens. So I think that mechanism itself is great. And I think I know the founders of NIA as well. And that when I first heard it, it's like when I first do you want to integrate with ENS? Their first answer, oh, we already have ENS name service built in. And I was like, okay. And I think for the ecosystem purpose, I think it fits the purpose. But like in our case, slightly different. The ENS, the EVM has lots of different chains. And we often get when ENS coming to this chain, and we have the problem basically NIA doesn't have on its own, is that we getting kind of fragmented chain experience, and we are hoping that our ENS layer 2 architecture will be the ways to kind of consolidate, because name service, that's one service you don't want the fragmentation. You don't have dozens of DNS service which hold different names and stuff, right? So in our case, we want, it's technically possible that people can basically have whatever the chain name service integrate through CCIP read. Only thing we don't recommend is to make use of the coming up of their on kind of TLD, because if more TLD spawning up, it will start conflicting with icons TLDs. But apart from that, if we want to have a name service for other chains, it's fine. But at the end of the day, if people create just standalone name service, they have to go to dozens or hundreds of wallets or exchanges to integrate. If they integrate through ENS, something like that, it automatically integrated with ENS. I think we have over 500, 600 integrations down wallet that can be done. So something technically they could do ENS integration with us. That if you have Makoto.near, you could use in a near only wallet, but they could set the near, if they have near.eth or near. Probably they don't want to put .eth on their name service, so they could have near.io, and they could do the ENS integration to make it Makoto.near.io is near name service as well as ENS service. So in that case, it's not necessarily the dystopia. We try to be friends as many chains or even the name service as possible. So I don't necessarily think it's a dystopian solution at the future.
I mean, when I said the dystopia, what I exactly mean, it's the amount of traceability that gives you that everyone's use some unique names which are not randomly generated, but some names that user should put. That means that it's easily decrease the amount of privacy, because your anonymity set in this case
okay, got it.
became less and
so
less
that's
and
one
less.
of the So you are saying that just because wallet is human readable, you have less privacy. That's the dystopian feature you're saying.
Yes.
But the
Yes,
simple
that's
solution
what I
for
mean.
that problem is
If everyone,
don't put your real name. Yeah, but don't put your real name. You just put that. You can put a nickname. It has to be human readable. Human readable doesn't mean your wallet address has to consist on your full name, your social security code, and your address all tied in. If that's the name of your wallet, yes, your privacy is compromised. But if you do not want to, have the full privacy, just put A. Then people do, if you have an A, I don't know, AAA or something you can recognize, that's enough, right? And when you give the wallet address to people, you give hex something. So they already know that that's tied into your financial asset, right? It's just a human recognizable, but that doesn't mean that's tied into your physical or real world security. So just use a different name. That's I think that's one of the most asked question, which I find it quite astonishing that that's the dystopian future. But I understand because I think when Tornado Cash, the Tornado Cash Tornado developer got arrested, and I think U.S. kind of security agencies tried to kind of label anyone who had a transaction with the Tornado. Someone did actually send a 0.1 ETH to all the famous, well-known crypto addresses, and that would reveal. Yeah, so there's certain aspect to it, but if you really worry about these, you just put different one. It's almost like a social network will kind of compromise security. Yes, it does compromise at some extent. If I tweet that I'm in Istanbul, I'm compromising the fact that I'm actually not at home, so people can break into it. But if you don't want to reveal that fact, you don't tweet. If you don't want to associate your social network, or you just use different name to social network name. So it's more about, I think, OPSEC level thing. Yeah. So yeah, that's a common answer to common question. But that's often asked, but it's just depends on how you operate. And I think it's more of the misconception that just because you use hex, you are secure. That's, I think, more risk you want to promote. Just because you're using hex doesn't mean
That's
you are
actually the
secure.
thing.
I think that's the biggest takeaway. Yeah.
Yeah, but the idea is that you mentioned the social networks and whatever, but the idea is that you have some real network, your real connection. That means that it's very high probability that you pay some Ethereums or some stable coins to your friends. And if you the idea is here that you don't need only to keep your username different from something that you use in a real social network. That means that your friends should use the different usernames, but this part, it's from OPSEC's perspective, it's not realistic, because everyone will just say that okay, I don't need to hide anything, I will use just the same username with association with my names. That means that your typical real social network, will be applicable to the...
But I think another OPSEC is, another OPSEC 101 is you usually have multiple accounts, and you separate public-facing crypto address and the private crypto address, and you don't mix together. That's OPSEC 101, right? Again, that would exist whether you have a human recognizable name or not. Because if I use it for something, if I donate to Gitcoin or something, or like if I post on a lens, you can't really tie in, right? The public address is to you. So that problem is there. It's just like ENS makes it very obvious that there is a tie. But the fact that you don't have that tie doesn't mean you are secure. I think that's the biggest takeaway. Like, not having ENS doesn't mean you are like secure and you are like confidential. As long as you're using blockchain, I think that comes down to the blockchain OPSEC, right? As soon as you start using your own chain, your own chain is exposed. That's a takeaway of today's lesson. Your own chain privacy is exposed. Whether you have ENS or not, you are exposed. Yeah, and you act.
Yeah, the biggest takeaway is that Ethereum is pseudo-anonymous. And even if you don't have ENS, it's pretty easy to track you. That's how you can find Tornado Cash, authors, addresses, whatnot. So yeah, the name is not the problem. if to put a short summary, we're actually running out of time, and I'm gonna wrap it up real quick. Thank you for spending some time with us today and teaching us the ENS ways. Really appreciate that. And yeah, as a small outro, I want to say that this podcast is brought to you by two Ukrainians away from home. And what we love to do at this podcast is actually ask everyone to support Ukraine in the effort to fight Russia, who is the terrorist state, and it's the second year of war at the moment. So yeah, what you can do to help is to send fiat or crypto via savelife.in.ua, and we would really appreciate that you do it to support us and support Ukraine. And thank you very much for tuning in. It was a pleasure. Thanks, Makoto. Thanks, Henry. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, no, not a big deal. Not a big deal.
Okay, good. We're done.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Makoto.